red ocean, as it's described in this book, is a space where there's already a lot of competition. If you are competing in a space where there's already a lot of competition, in the classical music world, that's orchestral auditions.
Welcome to another episode of Contrabass Conversations, your show covering life on the low end of the spectrum. I am your host, Jason Heath, and I'm so glad to have you here today. Visit our site at contrabassconversations.com for all the details about what's going on here. And I'd love to hear from you. Send me a message. Feedback at contrabassconversations.com. Let me know when you discovered the show, a guest suggestion, anything like that. That would be great. I know you're going to love today's episode featuring Andrew Hitz, who is a soloist, clinician. He's the former tubist of the Boston Brass. He and I went to Northwestern University together. We were in the same dorm together back in the 90s. Andrew is also, and that's why he's on the podcast, the host of a wonderful podcast of his own called The Entrepreneurial Musician. And I've just had so much fun, and I've gotten so much inspiration from listening to this podcast. If you're not subscribed, I highly recommend doing so. We've got a link in the show notes. I have gotten a lot of great ideas about what to do myself for Contrabass Conversations based on listening to this show. So Andrew and I dig into all kinds of topics. We talk about blue ocean versus red ocean strategy, and how we're trained as classical musicians to live in red oceans. We dig into that pretty early in the episode, so that'll clear up some of those terms. How you can stand out in a noisy field, the best time to start a project and the second best time. How so many people seem to just be waiting around for audiences to magically become educated and want to come to concerts. I love that segment of our conversation. The crazy hard work that's behind every seemingly overnight success. So many other topics. We've had some shared guests, actually. Ranaan, Meyer, and Peter Seymour we've both had on our shows. Ranaan Meyer was actually Andrew's very first guest. And Seth Godin, an author that we both love dearly. So you're going to love this talk. I had so much fun chatting with Andrew. I was on his podcast a few months ago. It was so great to be able to reciprocate and have him on the podcast here. One of my favorite interviews recently. You will totally dig it. And I'd like to take a moment and thank our sponsor, D'Addario Strings, for sponsoring Contrabass Conversations. And check out our latest giveaway with them for Helicore strings. D'Addario is giving away a set of orchestra, pizzicato, and hybrid strings. ContrabassConversations.com will take you there. And I've used the orchestra strings in the past. I've used the hybrid in the past. The hybrids work great on my past bass. They're quick bow response. They got great pizzicato sustain. They're used by Daniel Kimbrough, who's an upcoming guest, by Barry Bales, by Larry Grenadier, so many players. They're designed, engineered, and crafted in New York. Check them out, and thank you for sponsoring the podcast, D'Addario. Okay, here we go with our episode with Andrew Hitz. I am on the line with Andrew Hitz, who I actually went to Northwestern with back decades ago at this point.
That's a long time ago.
And Andrew was kind enough to have me on his podcast, The Entrepreneurial Musician. And so thank you for doing that, Andrew.
You were a great guest.
Oh, man. And I'm just so glad that you're on the podcast now. I think you have so much to share with my audience. And there's going to be so much that we can dig into. Maybe just give people the 60, 90 second Andrew Hitz, growing up, going to school, finding your way in the Boston Brass, that kind of thing.
Well, first I have to say that I always have gravitated towards bass players. Yep. I don't know why. I played in NRO and I hung out every day with John Grillo. I went to NOI. I hung out every day with Ranaan Meyer, who's like a brother to me. Eric Larson growing up, all the knucklehead bass players and I, it would take us about 30 seconds at one of those summer festivals to be like, hey, what are you doing? I don't know. What are you doing? So it's good to be on the podcast. So I started playing the tuba in the fourth grade. They just handed me a tuba and I played it and it sounded awful and I laughed and that was it. And I caught on really fast and started taking private lessons in fourth grade, which is not super common. But then we lived in the Boston area, so I had a lot of opportunities there. Ended up at Northwestern, as you just said, where I did my undergraduate. I then went to Arizona State, where I was worked with Sam Palafian, who's some of your audience might not know him, but he's a super famous tuba player who has played with everyone from Pink Floyd to Lionel Hampton to the Metropolitan Opera. So yeah, he's really incredible. And I left that degree in the middle of it to join Boston Brass, which had an emergency, which I filled in. It went really well. Then they had an audition, which I won. I played with Boston Brass for 14 years. I stepped down in January of, so exactly 3 years ago, January of 2014. And Sam Palafian, the guy I already mentioned, actually ended up taking my place in Boston Brass, which was, it's not every day that you hand your gig off to your mentor, but that's exactly what happened. And then I got off the road because my wife and I wanted to start a family. So we've got a kid who turns 3 in April, and I chase him around a lot of days, and I still do a bunch of traveling. I host 2 podcasts, The Entrepreneurial Musician, as you appeared on, and also The Brass Junkies, which I host with Lance LeDuc. And I've written a couple of books in the Band Director's Guide series. I've got a third one of those coming out. I have volumes for tuba and trombone are out. Trumpet is on the way. And I'm also writing a book that I don't have the title exactly worked out yet, but it's basically going to be called The Entrepreneurial Musician, or Lessons Learned from the Entrepreneurial Musician, which will hopefully be out later this year. I need to get a firm deadline there, or else I'm fooling myself, but I don't have one yet. I can't lie. And I still do lots of solo travel. I do some consulting for the music business. I definitely have a portfolio career now. I had a nice, neat answer before, which was Boston Brass, and now it's a long-winded answer because there's 15 income streams, probably more. Some of them are really small, some of them are medium, some of them are bigger, and they all kind of combine to make a living.
Well, I love it. And I feel like we have a lot in common in terms of that and the multiple income streams and all that. And before we dig in, I totally random question. Did you live in Jones Arts Dorm?
I did.
I have a memory of you from like 1994, 95. Nothing bad. I maybe have other memories. There was that.
And this is Andrew being nervous.
No. Very, very G-rated. But there was that great room. Remember, like the Jones great room. I remember you playing something for one of those. They were like these weekly. They weren't called convocations. You know what I'm talking about?
It was performance hour. Yeah, it was like every Friday night at like 7 p.m. or something, and there was a performance hour. Yep. Yeah, man. There you go. You, I think that the year before that, like my freshman year, our suite, 2 Red, we had something called the 2 Red Performance Commando Unit, and it was like a performance art troupe, and there were a couple of them that were edgy enough that we got called into student life.
There we go.
So it was like, so that's what I was wondering, whether that was one of those, which, and it was really great performance experience, but maybe not all of it is describable on your podcast unless you want to change the rating. So,
Well, so I love it. So you have all these projects going, with the 2 podcasts and me just doing 1 podcast. I feel like I'm always on the verge of being in over my head, and then the book projects and everything. And I'd love, actually, maybe a great place to start is like, why a podcast? Like, what inspired you to launch a podcast in particular?
That's a great question. Yeah, the Brass Junkies came out in I guess March of 2015, and TEM came out in April of 2015. So not quite the 10 years that you've been plugging away here. When my current partner at Pedal Note Media, which is the digital media company that produces both of these, his name is Lance LeDuc, and he was a former member of Boston Brass with me. And we both wanted to get off of the road. And it was an awesome, awesome, awesome way to make a living. I mean, we played all over the world. I mean, almost 40 countries that I performed in with Boston Brass. It was great, but it's very tiring. After some people can do it forever. I don't get it. It just kind of wears you down like the Colorado River made the Grand Canyon, over time, at least to a lot of us. And so I wanted to get off the road. We did a business model canvas where which anybody who's not familiar with it is a process where you can it basically makes you put down on paper all sorts of different things, like what your value proposition is, who your core customers are, what your incoming money is, what your expenses are. And you do this process with Post-it notes. It's really fascinating. And the Post-it notes end up being, you can move them around, you can combine them. It's long story short, Lance and I took like 3 or 4 days at Boston Brass summer camp when we taught a lot, but then we also had a lot of free time. And we did this whole thing, which ended up spitting out Pedal Note Media. And we realized the Brass Junkies was first. And what we realized that we had, what is, as Lance says, also David Cutler, the savvy musician, says a lot, what's your unfair advantage? And our unfair advantage was that because of circumstances, I had the privilege of playing with some of the most famous brass players in the world, and I've become friends with a lot of them because I play with a lot of them a lot of the time. And so I happen to have Joe Alessi, the principal trombone player of the New York Philharmonic, arguably the most famous trombone player in the world. We happen to be friends. I text him, he texts me back. I tell him that I think that the Yankees are not a desirable baseball team. He tells me what he thinks of the Red Sox, and we just, go round and round. And so that was something that a lot of young trombone players would absolutely kill, to be able to ask Joe one question, let alone, a whole bunch. So we thought, why don't we host, a podcast where we interview the Joe Alessis, the Marty Hackelman, who used to be horn in the Canadian Brass and the Empire Brass, the National Symphony, Carol Jansch of the Philadelphia Orchestra. The list goes on and on. Why don't we interview those folks and kind of give people kind of backstage access to people's careers and things like that. And sure enough, it hit pretty much right away because we, as you figured out, now to be a good interviewer, you of course have to listen well, but boy, like 80% of being a good interviewer is having someone good to interview.
Yes.
And so, if you have somebody that's really interesting, whether they're crazy articulate or just kind of articulate, if they have a really interesting story, it's going to make for a great interview, And so that was kind of how we stumbled onto that. And TEM came out of the fact when we started doing the Brass Junkies, I really enjoyed it a lot. And I enjoyed the medium, and it's kind of long form. And I listen to a ton of podcasts myself. I listen to a lot of them and have for not for a long time. You've been making them for 10 years. So I can't say a lot, but for maybe the last 3 or 4 years, I've listened regularly to a lot of podcasts on everything from sports to politics to business to music to you name it. And I wanted to be able to, kind of establish myself as a voice in entrepreneurship in musical circles. Mm-hmm. And I also wanted to get to interview the people that I'm getting to interview for that show. And I'm lucky enough now where I've got people who are emailing me, asking me if they can be guests on the show, who are people where, I've gotten some emails where it's like, well, of course you can be a guest on my show. Goodness gracious. Yeah. Yes. So that's how I entered into the podcast realm.
Oh, cool. Yeah, there's something special about the medium, and I've for years, ever since I started mine or before, I listen to them all the time too. Like when I'm driving or when I'm doing the dishes or working out or whatever. And yeah, there's this kind of connection you develop with the host that's it's different than video, it's different than text, it's a little harder in some ways, I think, to actually build that audience in the audio format. But once you get people into your world and educate them and they start to listen in, they're fans for life, I found.
Yeah, it's really it's quite enjoyable, and I love getting to, even some of the ones who are friends of mine who I've interviewed for both podcasts, I've gotten to know some details about their life, their career better just through talking to them into a mic, which is pretty cool. And I've also just some people that I know professionally that I've interviewed and I've gotten to know really well. There's a couple people on TEM that I didn't know at all before I interviewed them. One of them, who's the dean of the Lawrence Conservatory, Brian Pirtle, he and we started talking, and it was like, 5 minutes into the interview, I felt like we had been friends for a long time. Like that guy is like 100% on my wavelength. Yeah. Or excuse me, I should say I'm on his wavelength. Yeah. He's brilliant. you can be a lot less brilliant than him and make a really good living for your insights into things, you know? Yeah. And so just getting to know, even for an hour, getting to know that guy, a lot better, which is also, even knowing him has opened up other doors. I really, really enjoy the process, and it is a lot of work. You're right. The consistency of it is what's the pain in the what is, because the family thing, the career thing, the whatever, everybody's got flare ups, everybody's got down weeks, and then everybody's got weeks where there's it doesn't feel like you have time to, take a shower. And it's like, well, if you want to have a regular podcast, then you got to plan accordingly or just do the work.
Yeah, and folks, if you haven't listened to Andrew's podcast, I link in the show notes. Definitely listen, and so many great episodes. I'll link up to a few of my favorites. And one thing that you do that I love is you put out an episode, and then you have this 5-8 minute kind of synopsis of some of the lessons, some takeaways from that podcast. And I just love that format. That's such a cool format. I thought about doing that, but I'm putting out so many podcasts anyway right now. It'd be a little bit aggressive on the. Right. But that's such a great idea. Those takeaway episodes.
Yeah, those are fun. I just take one thing from someone's interview that really struck me hard, and then I just kind of riff on it, briefly. And then some of the episodes for TEM are just me talking about a subject, which could be 10, could be 25 minutes. But a lot of them are interviews with people. So it just and at one point I was had a strict, format of, it was interview, TEM short, solo interview, and then it would be in groups of 5. And that's still kind of the loose format, but that's the cool thing about having a podcast, and you can see what's hitting, what's not. And there is no boss. I mean, I happened to not release episodes for 2 weeks in December, which wasn't super planned, but the holidays, I got sick, and just the holidays. I mean, no one needs to hear about how my holidays were crazy. Everyone who's listening had crazy holidays, but it was just and it was just, and I didn't fret it. I was like, I'm going to release one in the first week of January, and no one's going to shed a tear. And there might be a couple people that notice, but they all are like me. They're entrepreneurial musicians. They understand, So, which is great, there's nobody to report to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I fully empathize with that as a guy who quit releasing episodes for 5 years and then came back.
Right. Right.
Well, an episode you put out recently that was a solo show was the Idea Sex. Right. That about and kind of about a concept of Seth Godin's, right? Isn't that kind of riffing off of?
No, it was. I read about it in James Altucher's book called "Choose Yourself," and I believe that he credits someone else whose name I didn't know at the time with the concept. So at this point, it's somebody's concept took someone's concept. But I really loved what he does. That's a really great book, by the way. Choose Yourself by James Altucher. It should get you fired up, just about doing whatever you do. But he talks about how that basically all ideas come from new ideas mating with old ideas, and then they form yet another new idea. And that Seth Godin, which is maybe what you're thinking about, because I quoted him in that interview as well, which Seth Godin, anytime that someone, he said that every once in a while he gets comments, because he has a daily blog, which I get in email form. I'm woken up by my 2-year-old who is standing in front of me and poking me, going daddy, daddy, daddy. And he's ready to rock. He's ready to have a wrestling match, and my eyeballs aren't working yet. But I come downstairs, I start making my pour over coffee, and while the water is heating up, I'm reading Seth Godin's blog post. I mean, that's the first thing I do every morning. Someone asked him how he gets that many ideas. He said, how can you possibly have enough ideas? His blog posts range from being good to being mind-blowing, and they're not all mind-blowing, but every one of them I'm glad that I spent some of them are 20 words long, and those when you can write a 20-word blog post that's mind-blowing, that's when it's I could have made that point. It would have taken me an hour on a podcast, and he's got 20 words. It's very impressive. But whenever he asks someone, when someone tells him that they don't have a lot of great ideas, his first question is, do you have a lot of bad ideas? And then the answer to that, he said, is always no. And so the key to having great ideas is having lots of ideas. And so James Altucher has an exercise which he recommends to people, which is to come up with 10 ideas a day, every single day, without skipping one for a full year. And the 10 ideas, he said, they're not career brainstorms, although they can be. They can be, it could be like even your favorite movies. I mean, whatever. It's like, but just you make a list of 10 ideas every single day. And he said that by the end of that year, that you will have written down, over 3,500, ideas. And he said that that's the key, is that you get a lot of ideas. And I think I shared this in that podcast. I'm sure I did, that my first idea for my own website, I read Gary Vaynerchuk's Crush It, which is a little bit dated now, but that's an awesome book also. Gary Vaynerchuk's crazy. He's like criminally insane, and he's awesome. He was born in the Soviet Union. He emigrated here in the late 70s. Really just he's built like multi-million-dollar business, a couple of them actually. I decided I wanted to do a website called Brass Hub, which was going to be like you remember this. This is why you're smiling. Yeah. And I won't say it. I'll just spell it. So and everybody's like, "What are you talking about?" The Brass Hub was going to be a site where all the brass, there'd be brass listings of jobs, and it would be kind of an online community, and I would run it, whatever. BrassHub.com was taken. It was a little bit of a different idea than what I was going to do, but it was taken. So then I thought of Brass Hits, which is perfect. It's my last name. There's some name recognition there. It's like, it can be the same thing as a, double entendre. So I then entered it into hover.com, where I reserved my URLs. And before I even hit submit to see if it was taken, I just lowered my head. I remember this vividly. We were in Brazil on tour, outside of Sao Paulo. And then I smiled, and sure enough, it's still available, because Brass Hits, if you spell it out, it looks like bras and then SHITZ.com, which it's
a different kind of site. Yeah,
I'm glad that's not a site, because it's like because the world does not need that. So, and I also remember going up to Lance, who I've always bounced business ideas off of, and said, "Hey man, I got Brass Hub's taken, but I got it." And I told him Brass Hits, and he goes, "That's great. There's like the name, the double," and then I showed it to him on my phone. He said, "That's not going to work." Yeah. So anyway, and luckily I then just went with my first name and then my last name, AndrewHitz.com, and which is great, because I've branched off into a lot of non-brass things like TEM, which I've interviewed a lot of brass players, but I've also interviewed composers. I've gotten emails from hip hop artists who have listened to it. So it's like, it's not just a brass thing. So it was kind of meant to be. But the point is that that first idea wasn't a bad idea, but it turns out it wasn't nearly as good an idea as just AndrewHitz.com. But you just kind of have to, you got to put that out put it down on paper, type it into the search field, and then see that it's not going to work before you end up stumbling on, not that figuring out your first name and your last name.com is some like great idea that I'm bragging to the world that I came up with, but you got to get through a lot of bad ideas before you get to good ones. You got to get through a lot of bad interviews when you're a podcaster till you get to some good ones, et cetera.
Yeah, and you have to sort of just be aware that it's just an inevitable process. Like I think I almost it would be weird if I have like a series of like 12 relatively bad ideas, or maybe that morph into something that's good, but I fully expect that to happen. That's and at this point in my life, I sort of relish that process. It's like, okay, I've got this idea is taking shape, and then I try it, but I fail fast, or I look and I readjust, and that's something I think about all the time these days. I also Gary Vaynerchuk has a podcast now. Have you checked that out? It's crazy.
The audio experience?
Yeah, it's nothing but just all the audio of all the stuff he does. So it's totally random. It's like one side of a phone interview. It's just like him ranting, and then all his Snapchats just like strung together, So it's like the most bizarro podcast you've ever listened to, or like him just like in a board meeting, or talking with a bunch of, it's all over the place, but it's such a, if you want to get fired up, he's a good guy to listen to for sure.
He's so great. And it's genuine. He's like that. He's like that all the time. He's you can tell that he's like that all the time. He's fantastic. You have to, and he talks about failing a lot. You have to expect and embrace and lean into failure. I mean, it's the same thing. If you're a bass player and you want to play the Mahler 1 solo as well as Ed Barker does, you're an idiot if you think you're going to be able to accomplish that in a month. I mean, Ed didn't accomplish it in a month.
Right.
Hal Robinson didn't accomplish him being able to play it like he does in a month. And not that their versions are like, not that your version can't be better or different in a better way, whatever. I mean, they've set the bar high, but lots of people have. But you have to. It's funny. I think a lot of musicians, if you were to hand me an English horn, which judging by how most people play it, I think must be hard. So like really hard, which a lot of people say about the tuba, I'm sure. Yeah. Your audience is like, hello, pot. Yeah. Kettle. Yeah, exactly. But if you handed me an English horn, it would sound beyond wretched, and it would sound beyond wretched for a month. And I would expect that because I've never played a reed instrument I think I've squawked on a clarinet once, maybe like in college when I was drunk. I mean, it's like I've never played any of those. But what's interesting is that as musicians, as artists, we've maybe never tried to market anything in our lives. And then we try it on social media or whatever for like a week and it doesn't go well. And then we get defeated by that, and it's like, whereas if you just picked up, or if I picked up a string bass, I mean, I can absolutely murder and get the quote unquote notes out with my air quotes here of a Mahler 1 solo on a bass. Cause but it'd be slidey. I mean, it was like, it'd be beyond awful. I'd get that nice, at the beginning of every note, which I'm told is not desirable. But it would be horrible. I would expect that. And so I think we have to approach all of our entrepreneurial type skills the exact same way, or maybe something that you've done for a while, but you've never tried to take next level. If you expect, and exactly what you were talking about and you embrace and are a perfect example of, if you bring a growth mindset and expect it to, not in a defeatist way, but if you expect it to not go that great, you have to learn from your failures every time. You also have to learn from your from your successes every single time. And as long as you remain teachable, which is really easy when it's easy, and then like those few times when you or I or any human is not in the mood, that's when we start feeling sorry for ourselves or taking credit for something that just was dumb luck or whatever. It's like the remain teachable thing, and that's whether it's business or bass or teaching or anything, that's kind of the key to life, which is easier said than done at times. But all the people I look up to all embrace that concept.
Yeah, for sure. Ranaan's a perfect example. I know Ranaan. I had him on my podcast years ago, and it's not like it's not like Time for Three. The world was not crying out for Time for Three, right?
Sure,
it was
wasn't.
not like, oh well, of course we're going to have these 2 violin and bass, like self-composed kind of like class. Right. And another friend of mine who you've also had on the podcast, Peter Seymour. The world was not asking for a cello, bass, flute,
I can't believe I didn't mention Peter Seymour. He was at NOI with Ranaan and I, and again, 30 seconds. It was like me, Ranaan, and Peter all just like met in the middle, and we're like, "Who are you? Who are you? I don't know, but it seems like I should know you." And that was it. Yeah, exactly. The world, and that's why we were talking beforehand about about the blue ocean, the blue ocean strategy, which is a great business book. I found it very empowering when the day when I was just about to say figured out, I just mean for myself, because this is painfully obvious, that the music business is succeeding in the music business, and the principles that you do behind that are like on the macro level are the exact same principles behind Procter and Gamble trying to sell more Johnson's baby shampoo. I mean, it's like it's all the exact same stuff, whether it's the marketing, the packaging, the branding, product development, finances, all that stuff. And so when you figure that out, then every single business book that's ever been written is all applicable to me as a tuba player, to me as a podcaster, to me as a self-published author. I mean, all of those things. And there are some of those books that end up kind of veering off into into quality control in like a factory type setting, which is obviously not super applicable to what you and I do. But whether it's Jim Collins' Good to Great, or there's just so many books that are just so great on all those subjects that have nothing to do with music. And Blue Ocean Strategy is one of those books that has nothing to do with music at all. And yet it has everything to do with music, because a red ocean, as it's described in this book, is a space where there's already a lot of competition, if you are competing in a space where there's already a lot of competition, then in the classical music world, that's taking orchestral auditions, that's taking military band auditions, that's the rest of the analogy doesn't work there, because it's not like you all actually get paid to, and I don't mean you meaning not me, I mean all of us, but everyone taking those auditions doesn't all get paid to play orchestral music, and it's just some get paid a lot. And that's one of those weird like gatekeeper situations where Hal Robinson gets paid a lot of money to play in an orchestra, and if you've never won an audition, you get paid nothing to play full time in an orchestra. But if you're a brass quintet or you're a string quartet, and you are two violins, viola, and cello, which there's a lot of those. There's a lot of those working. But if you're, if that's what you're starting to do, don't let me or anybody else tell you that you're not going to be the next Juilliard string quartet or Borromeo string quartet or Enzo or new, old, whatever. But man, is that a crowded field? I mean, how many string quartets are there at really great music schools right now who have not even graduated yet, who can just play the snot out of late Beethoven quartets? And so it's actually easier to succeed when you are how about a string quartet with a bass in it? Is that even legal? I think there's, it's like, I think that's frowned upon, and I'm not talking about the Trout Quintet, which is an incredible piece of music. But again, there's a lot of competition there. Lots of people have done that. And it's like string quartet and bass. Let's play the Trout, it's like, or just, Time for Three, as you said, Project Trio, as you said, which are two really great, the Nosal Brass, which if any of your listeners have never heard Monosal Brass, go to YouTube and search Monosal, which is MNOZIL Brass, and I'm sure you're going to put this in the show notes, and link to the Lonely Boys video on YouTube. There are two of them. One's 7 minutes and one's 4 minutes. Watch the long version. And I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. You will, from a theatrical standpoint, a musical standpoint, your mind is going to get blown. There's a very good chance. And so that's a Blue Ocean. Monosal Brass is a 7-piece brass ensemble that does like theatrical and not your standard brass quintet, like humor shtick, kind of like, oh, it's funny, he's trying to empty a spit on the other guy's shoe. And I've done some of that shtick too. And there's a place in the world for it. But Monosal is like, it's a little bit edgier. They actually have like a choreographer, and they're not dancing like ballet dancers. But it's very difficult to describe what they do in a good way. Just like the band Fish that I'm obsessed with, I've seen over 180 times. It's very hard to describe the music of Fish. And so if Project Trio ended tomorrow, if they announced today on Facebook that they were playing for the next month, they had a tour, and that the three of them were amicably going their separate ways and they were never playing ever again, it'd be a very small corner of the world and of the internet, but there would be a bunch of people who would have a meltdown that they could never, ever see Project Tree, that there would never be another video, that there would never be another, another show. There'd never be another album. There'd never be another masterclass. Same with Manozel, same with Time for Three. Mm-hmm. If you are a smoking good graduate string quartet at Juilliard, if you are not I'm talking like hanging at the top international competitions or winning them, and you announce that in a month that you're breaking up, a couple of close friends, your mother, there's a few people that are, and I'm being flippant on purpose, it's like, but a bunch of people are going to be like, oh, that's too bad. You guys are great, but no one's going to really miss you because there's lots of people playing Beethoven, playing Mozart. And so the Blue Ocean thing is starting a bass podcast 10 years ago. That is like when on Blue Ocean on Wikipedia should just have like your podcast as the example, I mean, that's like, that's it, I mean, that's absolutely that's it. The Brass Junkies also didn't exist, even though we started late. Although I love your quote from your appearance with me. It's like the best time to start a podcast is yesterday or a year ago or 5 years ago. Yeah. And the second best time is like today, right. It's like, so yes, you're late. Okay, great. So you're not that late. You're not as late as if you wait a year, So yeah, Blue Oceans are so important. And we're trained as classical musicians. We're trained to like hang out in red oceans.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But the problem is if you're a string quartet and you do weddings and you don't do anything really special, and you could play your butts off, but if the people who are hiring you can't tell the difference between you and some other string quartet in town who's also really good but not as good as you guys all went to Curtis, these other people didn't. Not that the people who went to Curtis are all better. Don't misquote me, but you understand what I'm saying, right? Yeah. If the people hiring you don't know that they're just going to hear two really great string quartets that are both very much going to get the job done, you're never going to have the opportunity to educate the person hiring you for that wedding and explain to them why your violin is a lot nicer and why there's a warmer sound that comes out of it. It's like, so that at that point you have one way to differentiate yourself, which is to make yourself cheaper than the other group. And that is a race to the bottom. Yeah. That's a race that you cannot win, because then one band will do it for $3,000, and the next will do it for $2,800, and then $2,500, and then $2,000, and then like you get down to a point and where it's like where one of the bands will be like, yeah, you take it. We're not doing that for $800. You got to split that 4 ways. So yeah, Blue Ocean, very, very, very important.
Yeah, well, it's one of those like you said, we're trained to hang out in red oceans, and I think that there's this I've heard for so many people, maybe not in so many words, but I think people are just kind of waiting around for people to become more educated, to be able to tell the difference, to become more educated, to want to go to more concerts, to all of a sudden have the orchestra business, quote unquote, turn around and start hiring more people for that giant baby boom mythological generation that's all going to retire at the same time, and all the orchestras are going to be open. You're going to open up the union paper. It's going to be 20 pages of ads, right? These are like sort of myths that a lot of people have been told, right? Some of us
to quote the great David Byrne from the Talking Heads song "Cross-Eyed and Painless," "Still Waiting," which they say over and over and over and over again in that tune. Yeah, that day's not coming.
Yeah. And I can't remember. I think I got this quote from you. I'm not sure if it's from you or where it's from. But the two of the most conservative professions in the world: classical music and higher education. Right?
Yeah, that was me.
Okay, I love that because so it's this unholy alliance of those two worlds that so much of us live in. And I was it on that David Cutler podcast I was recently listening to. We're talking about how he was talking about how you look at course curriculum from 1950 and from right now, and it looks almost the same. And if you can think of anything else in this world where that's true, like look at a commercial from 1950 or now. Look at,
Yeah. I played a Boston brass gig at the University of Florida maybe 5 or 6 years ago. My dad was a graduate of the University of Florida back in 1965, and he actually flew down to come to the show, which was awesome. It was a Kenton Christmas gig. It was a lot of fun, but it was his first time on campus in 50 years. And he, I was joking to the crowd. I joked and said my dad was the class of 65 and that it was his first time there, and the crowd erupted. And I then joked, I said, yeah, we walked past buildings that were dedicated to sciences that were not invented when he went to school here, which the crowd likes it when you make fun of your old man. So, and he was laughing, but yeah, everything has changed since the 1950s. I mean, like, goodness gracious. Yeah, like everything. But yes, the curriculum, and there are a lot of places that are starting to teach entrepreneurship, and a lot of them that are teaching it poorly. But you have to start somewhere. You have to expect, that it's Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't agree with quite as fine a point as he puts on it, but he says that he believes firmly that you cannot teach entrepreneurship. And what my version of that is that you have to do it. You can't be in a lecture-based entrepreneurship class where you just listen to, which is also why, if all you do is listen to TEM, I was going to say in a self-deprecating, in a genuine way, like I hope it's helpful, but I know it's helpful because the people I interview, you have to be an idiot to not learn from them because they're the best of the best in our business. But in spite of the at times non-timely and insightful questions, being hurled at them from me, but if all you do is listen to all those people and go like, oh yeah, listen to you and say, yeah, that'd be great. I should launch a podcast, and also there's nothing wrong with listening to your episode and then thinking I have no interest in launching a podcast. Then don't. I mean, there's lots of stuff that you don't do. And then if you did, you wouldn't be that good at it. I mean, there's plenty of people who would not be good podcast hosts, and that's not good. That's not bad. It's just is, There's a lot of stuff that I do not have a brain for like anything graphic design related at all. I know a great logo. I know a great book cover when I see it, but like, that's not something that I'm interested in learning because I think that my ceiling would be relatively low. So I've got somebody who I use who is phenomenal at it, and so. But you got to take action on all that stuff. And like you said, expect failure. And a point that I always try to make on my podcast, and I'm always very quick to point out that I don't hold up getting married or buying a house or having kids as any kind of an ultimate goal for the world at all. That happened to be mine, but like, everybody's path. I know some people who are single intentionally and love it. Other people who are married who have zero interest in ever having kids. But I can tell you whether you're going to become a parent or not, going to get married or not, that you have more time, with the exception of someone who's taking care of someone who's sick or whatever. But in general terms, you have more time right now than you're going to have in 5 or 10 years. If you're 18, yes. If you're 28, yes. If you're 38, yes. So like now is the time to kind of to dive into those blue oceans to figure out what is it that you're going to provide the world? What problem are you going to solve for the world that the world can't live without? And that's what Time for Three has done. That's what you've done with this podcast. That's what Drew McManus has done with the Adaptistration blog. I mean, I'm bouncing around here. I mean, it's like all completely different things. And yet that's what J.K. Rowling did with the Harry Potter series. I mean, it's like, was the world like lacking, it's not science fiction, fantasy, whatever the genre is. There's Harry Potter fans screaming at me right now. So, but that's not a good group to make mad. So they mobilize quickly and efficiently. It's not good. Strike that. You can edit this out, right? Right. No, the point is that the world had plenty of that stuff, but she created a world in those books that the world writ large could not live without, and so that's what you got to do. It's easier said than done, but you got to start failing in order to you got to start the laundry to have clean clothes. And you got
to launch. You got to put stuff out in the world, and that's another thing you were talking about with David, and like looking at the year ahead of you, and like what's going to actually come out, and how many projects do we all sit on that just kind of never get off the ground? These
Yep.
And with no expectation, like Drew, I'm sure I've never looked at Drew McManus's first post on Adaptastration. I'm sure maybe they were okay, but I'm sure he came a long way. I know I came a long way in my podcast. Everybody, you just got to get started and put things out and develop a practice. And I love going back to the James Altucher, the idea of becoming an idea machine, writing down 10 ideas a day. I find that so much in my own life. Like if I'm in that mode and I'm writing, that's when the ideas start coming. It's like it's not magic. You just butt in seat and the ideas will come. Yeah.
It is not magic. It's the grind. It's hard work. It's showing up. That's also how you get really good at the tuba. I mean, it's pretty rare that somebody, even people, Don Howie plays bass in the Houston Symphony. He and I we grew up together. We lived together at the high school Tanglewood Institute. I was in Boy Scouts with his little brother, and I took his little sister to the junior prom. So I worked my way through the family. But Don was kind of was this instant success kind of in the bass world, and I'm putting instant in air quotes. He never touched a bass until he was in 9th grade, and he won his position in the Houston Symphony, I believe, when he was 23. So 14 to 23, which is that's early to win a position like that, and that's starting late to win a position like that at that age. And yet, if you saw that guy for those 9 years, he was good enough to get into Ed Barker's studio at BU, very shortly, after, 3 years and 3 months after he started playing the bass, he got into Ed's studio. But the guy practiced all of the freaking time. And he was in 2 youth orchestras in Boston, and he was taking private lessons from day one. And then at BU, when, I didn't go to BU, but I hung out a lot with friends. Northwestern has the weird schedule. So Eric Larson, who I already mentioned, who's also in the Houston Symphony, I would hang out with him for 2 straight weeks before I would go out to Northwestern for the start of the year. And Eric and Don were both guys that, Eric and I especially, we used to enjoy hanging out quite a bit, but they both always got their work done. Always, always, always. And so, 23 years old out of nowhere wins a major job, but it's but man, it was almost a decade of crazy hard work. Right. And it's not a sprint. It's not there's a Philly section bass opening, I'll see you in 6 weeks. Right. Chris Hall, who's my friend who plays tuba in the Met. There's a reason why I was not in Civic, is because my junior and senior years at Northwestern, Chris moved back to town and he won that audition both years. And then in the middle of that second year won the Met job. The reason I wasn't in Civic was because of him, because he beat me at those things. And he actually moved back in with his parents. And there was, it was 8, 9, 10 months, maybe it was a year, where he basically lived in his parents' basement, and he was young enough that he could do this. But all he did was practice. Yeah. He would come out of his parents' basement 40 minutes from Northwestern once a week to come and hang out with me and a couple of my roommates, and we would hang out for the night and get crazy, and then he would go back, and then all of a sudden, quote unquote, I get a phone call, and this was way before cell phones. There was an answering machine message that said Hitz, I won the job, click. And it's and I just started screaming in my apartment. It's holy moly, that's not what I was screaming. I just cleaned it up for you. So I'm maturing, man. Self-awareness is slowly creeping into me now that I'm a father. So, and so the grind, that's the grind that you do as a podcaster and as a bass player, and, and that Drew does as a blogger and has for over 10 years. And so it's all about consistency of work. And when you work that hard consistently and then you add a few sprints in here or there, man, does that because it's easier to maintain skills on an instrument, or I think on anything, than it is to obtain them. Yes. And now my playing is a little bit up and down. And then the last year, just over a year, I've played with the National Symphony. I've played with the Baltimore Symphony. I've played with Alarmal Sound. I've played with some of the best musicians in the world. I mean, I'm still playing lots and lots and lots. But I used to be on the road, over 6 months a year, playing all around the world all the time. I mean, the tuba was always on my face. And now my wife was just went with a friend to the Dominican Republic for the weekend just to kind of get away and recharge. And I was just on 100% solo dad duty for 4 straight days. I was not exactly like digging into the tuba rep over those 4 days, But when I have a recital or something coming up, I ramp it up. But it's the key is the long, the long-term working, every single day putting in the time over a long period of time, and then you could do anything.
And people think, wow, how lucky you are to have gotten this or done this, but they don't see that behind the scenes work of like Eric Larson, in the practice room, or what you do on the tuba, or what you've done with your entrepreneurial projects, or what I do. It's just having a practice. I mean, I remember talking to Peter Seymour, or I think he talked about this on your podcast too, but getting Project Trio off the ground, making this spreadsheet of like thousands of venues.
3,000.
Yeah. And I think something like 6 places like ended up booking him or something.
I love the way he put that. When then he said he got 6 yeses out of 3,000, and he didn't get 2,994 no's. He got a whole bunch of didn't call him back, didn't email him back, whatever. But he got over 1,000 straight up no's, a bunch of ignores. And then he said, but do you know what 6 yeses is called? And I said, what? And he said, a tour.
Yeah.
And it's like, boom, mind blown, And it's like, I've said that to rooms before when I've given presentations. It's like, are you willing to sit there and come up with your own list of 3,000 venues, potential venues, obvious ones, not obvious ones, track down all of the work of how you get in touch with them, follow through with them, etc., in order to get your first tour? And if not, that's okay. Peter is insane. He's like, he should be committed. I mean, the guy is not right in the head. But that's like a crazy amount of work, but just don't, and we've all done this before about something, but don't catch yourself feeling sorry for yourself that you can't get a first tour if you're not willing to come up with a list. And by the way, don't use Peter's list because Peter's already hit all those people up. Yeah. Come up with your own list, execute the own list. Every no is just, is going to be another, what's the old sales idiom is that you, which it might be true, it might not. Who cares? It's good. It's like, that if for every 10 no's leads to a yes. And so there was some famous salesman who used to say that he used to hope that a call was a no because he knew it would be one more closer to that yes. Yeah. So which is great. That's a growth mindset in action.
Yeah, it's like the concept of collecting no's. Make a practice of collecting no's, which I love. And that's such a great, like you said, like a scarcity abundance, like that. Like what a great example of rather than sitting around and waiting for the phone to ring to maybe sub with this orchestra every once in a while. And how many people fall into that trap? And I mean, I did that kind of work for about 7 years, just like playing my regional jobs, hoping for something else, and just sort of realizing I'm just like on this endless circle. You look at Peter and all of a sudden the career that he's carved out, or Ranaan, or you, or what I've done with the podcast now. I mean, there's so much opportunity in this world. It's just finding that blue ocean, like you said.
What's really worth noting here is that Peter Seymour was in New World. Mm-hmm. He did NRO. He did NOI. He played a year or 2 years as 1 years with Cleveland. Mm-hmm. I mean, like he was like, for someone that didn't have a quote unquote gig yet, other than that, he was like at the absolute top he was one of the rising stars in the bass world. Yep. Ranaan, exact same way. He subbed with Philly all the time. He went to Curtis. Right. He did a whole bunch of those, the fancy festivals. I mean, like he was an absolute, in terms of on the traditional track, he was one of Hal Robinson's star students. Mm-hmm. That's not easy to do. I mean, it's like he's got a lot of students who are great, and he was one of the chosen ones, and he still carved his own path because like, try telling your landlord, like, no, I don't think you understand. Like, and if he heard me describing himself as one of like Hal's prize students and one of the chosen ones, he would tell me where to go. But, try telling your landlord, like, well, I've only got 1,200 of the 1,500 this month, but I'm like, I'm like maybe the best player in Hal Robinson's studio, and they're gonna be like, I don't know who Hal is, but if he's not the guy showing up with the other $300, I do not care. You know, he's like French bow, German bow, Canadian bow. I do not care. You know, so that and $5 will get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks. You know,
right.
So you just got to do so. Like even those people who are actually succeeding by all of the traditional, 1950s School of Music metrics. Ended up going their own way. And I personally can't imagine, and this is not in any way a slight to anybody in one of those, in any real job. When the few times that I've had the privilege of playing with the NSO or Baltimore, I mean, it's like, it feels like I'm driving a race car. I mean, it's like, it's so exhilarating. But I can't imagine Peter Seymour in an orchestra like that. I mean, and he would succeed on a personal level and a professional level and a musical level. But he just has so many energies that I can't see him only doing that and then not doing a crazy number of side projects. Even Ranaan with Time for Three, he's got the Wah-Bass Institute, and he's got all of these different projects and all these outgrowths from all of that, because the dude has just got, he's got more energy than any 5 average people that you could combine is him. And he's a dad. I was supposed to go to his kid's 2-year-old birthday party on Saturday, but there was an ice storm. So I had to, I had to miss it, which was sad. It was going to be completely chaotic. So, but, maybe we'll catch number 3, but, it's like the energy that those guys have, is contagious, and it can be a learned behavior. It really can. Mm-hmm. So, which is, that's why I look up to people like you, because of how consistently you've been doing what you do and how well you do it. And the fact that you just keep showing up all the time. Which is great.
Well, it's one of those. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And the thing it's like goes back to that concept of in business of just adding value, right? Like what Ranaan is doing with Wah-Bass and with the group, and what Peter's done, listening to people, finding a blue ocean and finding ways to add value. And I mean, that's how much, and it, yeah, Peter had, ended up being in Cleveland long-term. Great. Maybe he'd be doing things on the side, but you just look at what he's added to the world, the music world, and enriched the music world, and enriched people's lives just with the music that he's done. I mean, it's really remarkable.
Yes.
Now you've got, and I'll send people to your website. You've got a Seth Godin transcription of a talk at Carnegie Hall. Is that right?
Yes,
okay.
It is.
Okay.
Yep. He's got, he did, I guess it was actually a year ago this month that he did a talk at Carnegie Hall to Juilliard students. And there is audio available of it. The audio is a little bit rough in spots, but for anyone that hasn't listened to TEM, I refer to Seth Godin so frequently that my wife calls him my spirit animal. He's like by far my favorite author. And I already talked about the blog post that I read every morning. But this talk, I emailed him, which I have heard him share in an interview before, that he gets over 5,000 emails a day. And so I emailed him, and I was very careful with what the subject line was. The subject line was, can I transcribe your Juilliard talk and give it away for free? Yeah. Was the subject. And literally 1 minute later, and then I did go, the email was like maybe 2 paragraphs short. I told him that I had a podcast, and that it just was, it had to be, classical musicians had to hear what he was talking about. Mm-hmm. And he literally 1 minute later, it was like 1:38. I sent it at 1:39. He emailed me back with an exclamation point that said, "Of course." That was it. Yeah, I mean, and I was like, and so I then emailed him right back, and I didn't take advantage of that to then send him like a 25 paragraph, like, "You're the best, I love you, you're my spirit animal," and I just, because at that point he'd be like, what I meant was, of course not. Yeah, Nick, I'm calling the police. But I then just very quickly said, I thank you so much for what you do and how blah, blah, blah. And then he emailed me back a second time and just said, thank you for, making a difference in the world, and keep doing what you're doing. It was like, it was really meaningful. So anyway, I transcribed, or rather I paid somebody to transcribe his talk, which you can go to andrewhitz.com/TEM. and you can click on the free Seth Godin book, which all you got to do is sign up for my email list for TEM, and then I will send you a link for the free book. Mm-hmm. So which is up through Gumroad, which you can get in a few different formats. But it's awesome. It's really, really, really great, and I really appreciate Seth for getting back to me and for insisting on that he has a video up, maybe his Vimeo channel that has that video up. And so, and again, at times the audio is like, I mean, you can make it out, but it's kind of, you have to strain. Yeah. Some people like and so, the selfish thing for him to do would be, well, I'm trying to drive traffic to my site and so, or to my channel. And so I don't want you giving away that talk for free without that going through the, et cetera. But he doesn't operate that way. He's all about like just putting things out there and about making the world a better place. And I think I did a good job of pitching why it needed to be done. And that's why he wrote back, of course. Yeah. So it's I highly recommend it to anybody. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So, folks, check it out. It's great. And if you aren't subscribed to TEM, subscribe for sure. It's I have a few. Like you, Andrew. I have a lot of podcasts to subscribe to, and there are a few that when they pop into my feed, it's like, okay, click. And that's one of the ones. That's one of my must listens. So I appreciate what you do, man.
I love yours too. So yeah, I love everything you do, the quality, the consistency, the energy you bring to it. So keep, as Seth would say, keep making a difference.
Hey, likewise.
Andrew, such a pleasure to have you on the show. Folks, check out The Entrepreneurial Musician if you haven't. AndrewHitz.com, his website will get you there, show you what else he's up to, or just search for it in iTunes or Stitcher or whatever app you use. And in the entrepreneurial spirit, I'm going to take this moment and let you know that I have just this week put out a new course. In fact, my first course about how I built what I've built online and how you can too. And it's on a brand new website. The website is jasonheath.live. This is where all my courses are going to live. Yes, there will be more courses. And no, they will not all be about the tech side of things, but that's how I decided to start. So this course is called Making an Impact. So there's a link in the show notes and check out jasonheath.live. Let me know what you think. We've got preview videos up there for the course. I would be fascinated to hear what you think. Feedback at contrabaseconversations.com. Send me an email. Leave me a message on social, whatever. I would love to get your thoughts. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you again soon for more life from the low end of the spectrum.